are here to talk about April's stories for The Things They Carried. Apologies that this video is coming out late. I anticipated that I would be able to do it before I went traveling, and I was not, so you get two The Things They Carried videos in the month of May. In this first one, which I'm posting earlier towards the beginning of the month, we are going to talk about two stories. We're going to talk about The Dentist, and we're going to talk about the sweetheart of the Song Tra Bong. So let's talk about The Dentist first. In The Dentist, we learn a little bit more about Kurt Lemon. We met Kurt Lemon in How to Tell a True War Story. This is what we learned about Kurt Lemon. Well, this is the first thing we learned about Kurt Lemon and How to Tell a True War Story. If you turn back to the beginning of that one, page 64 in my edition, which I think is the most common edition, so probably your edition too. It says that Rat Kylie is writing a letter home to Kurt Lemon's sister. And in it, he says, it's a terrific letter. It says, he was a great, great guy, Rat says. Anyway, it's a terrific letter, very personal and touching. Rat almost bawls writing it. He gets all teary, telling about the good times they had together, how her brother made the war seem almost fun, always raising hell and lighting up villas and bringing smoke to bear every which way. A great sense of humor, too, like the time at the river when he went fishing with a whole crate of hand grenades. Probably the funniest thing in the world, Rat says. All that gore, about 20 zillion dead fish. I am, of course, editing this and leaving out words that might flag something on YouTube. Her brother, he had the right attitude. He knew how to have a good time. On Halloween, so we're on page 65 now. On Halloween, this real hot spooky night, the dude paints up his body all different colors and puts on this weird mask and hikes over and goes trick-or-treating almost stark naked, just boots and balls and an M16. A tremendous human being, Rat says. Pretty nutso sometimes, but you had to trust him with your life. And then the letter gets very sad and serious, and Rat pours his heart out. He says he loved the guy. He says the guy was his best friend in the world. They were like soulmates, he says, like twins or something. They had a whole lot in common. He tells the guy's sister he'll look her up when the war's over. So what happens? Rat mails the letter. He waits 2 months, and she never writes back. So let's go to page 83. Page 83 in The Dentist. Actually, 82. 82 in The Dentist. It says, when Kurt Lemon was killed, and we know he's killed from How to Tell a True War Story. That's the reason why Rat is writing the letter, right? So it says, when Kurt Lemon was killed, I found it hard to mourn. So this I would be the fictional Tim O'Brien. I found it hard to mourn. I knew him only slightly. And what I did know was not impressive. He had a tendency to play the tough soldier role, always posturing, always puffing himself up, and on occasion he took it way too far. It's true that he pulled off some dangerous stunts, even a few that seemed plain crazy, like the time he painted up his body and put on a ghost mask and went out trick-or-treating on Halloween. But afterward, he couldn't stop bragging. He kept replaying his own exploits, tacking on little flourishes that never happened. He had an opinion of himself, I think, that was too high for his own good. Or maybe it was the reverse. Maybe it was a low opinion that he kept trying to erase. In any case, it is easy to get sentimental about the dead, and to guard against that, I want to tell a quick Kurt Lemon story. So, it's easy to get sentimental about the dead. That's an important line, and I don't have it marked yet. I'm going to mark it right now. This is a key line. It is easy to get sentimental about the dead. And to guard against that, I'm going to tell you a story. Just mark that for now. We'll come back to it. Someone who's reading along with me said that they love it when I say we'll get back to that. I promise we will. We will always get back to it. A lot of when I say we're going to get back to it, I mean we're going to get back to it as we read the very last story, The Lives of the Dead, which it's just going to knock your socks off. But we got to read everything else first so that we can get back to it. Okay, so Kurt Lemon has died. We know Rat Kiley really loved him, and Rat Kiley tells the sister the story of the Halloween night, and we know that fictional Tim O'Brien has some reservations about him, and he tells the story of the Halloween night. That Halloween night is going to show up again in a much later story, a little bit different context. Just like I would argue that Kurt Lemon is actually Ted Lavender and Ted Lavender is actually Kurt Lemon, and we're hearing the same story, but it's being told differently for different purposes. The Halloween story will be told again, but it will be told differently for a different purpose. So we've got Kurt Lemon, and we're about to hear a story about how he goes to, well, we're about to hear a story about how a dentist comes to check all the soldiers' teeth. This dentist lectures them about gingivitis and bad breath and tooth care. And this dentist, who's a commanding officer, was he a commanding officer? He's higher ranking than them. He's not a commanding officer. He's higher ranking than them. He's the expert. And he is going to tell them how to keep their teeth clean. But it also says this about him. On page 83, it says, he was a tall, skinny, young captain with bad breath. And for half an hour, he lectured us on oral hygiene. So this harkens back to everything we've read thus far, particularly in How to Tell a True War Story. This harkens back to the ineptitude of those in charge, or how those in charge are at a disconnect from the soldiers themselves. It reminds me a lot of the passage in How to Tell a True War Story where on page 72, the guys who've heard all of the party and the singing and the wine glasses tinkling and all of that stuff, they've heard it and they've blown everything up. They've nuked everything. And then they have to go back and they have to explain their action because it doesn't seem like anything was there. And so the commanders want to know, why did you do what you do? What did you see? What did you hear? And they're freaked out because even after they've done this, the sounds remain. They were ghost sounds anyway, right? You can't blow up a ghost, apparently. So on page 72, it says, remember, they don't talk. They're all ears. All ears. They don't talk. You should remember that. You should remember that. So they pack up and they start humping. Remember, humping means to carry all their stuff. So they pack up, they start humping. They head down the mountain back to base camp. And when they get there, they don't say diddly. They don't talk. Not a word. Like they're deaf and dumb. Later on, this fat bird colonel comes up and asks, what the hell happened out there? What did they hear? Why all the ordnance? The man's ragged out. He gets down tight on their case. I mean, they spent $6 trillion on firepower, and this colonel wants answers. He wants to know what the story is. But the guys don't say zip. They just look at him for a while, sort of funny-like, sort of amazed, and the whole war is right there in that stare. It says everything you can't ever say. It says, man, you got wax in your ears. It says, poor guy, you'll never know. Wrong frequency. You don't even want to hear this. Then they salute him and walk away because certain stories you don't ever tell. Let me tell you a story about Kurt Lemon. One day this dentist comes and he's the expert and he's telling them how to take care of their teeth, and he has not taken care of his own teeth. And he's going to do oral surgery on them. He's going to give them a checkup. He's going to pull teeth. He's going to use Novocaine. He sets up a little tent after giving them this long spiel, and they don't say a word. They know he's got bad breath. They know he doesn't have good oral hygiene. They know that he can't do anything for them, really, that they can't do for themselves. And because he's not living their life, right? He's telling them what to do, but he's not doing it himself. Sets up a tent. And all the guys, they're not saying a word. They're just going in. They know this guy he's not right. He's not above board. He himself has bad breath. They don't say a word. They just go in, they do what they're told. Kurt Lemon, he gets antsy. He gets nervous. He gets uncomfortable. He refuses to go in. He says, no, I've got bad stories. I've had bad experiences. In high school, I had bad experiences with the dentist, with war. I'm not doing it. And then he feels so small, so much shame, so much guilt for not doing it. I want you to think about friends and enemies. I want you to think about friends and enemies, which we talked about last time. In enemies, Jensen says Strunk took his jackknife, and Strunk denies it, and they fight, and Jensen breaks his nose. Strunk comes back from medic, and Jensen is afraid of retaliation. And so Jensen breaks his own nose. The irony is that Strunk did deserve to have his nose broken, did take the jackknife. Kurt Lemon, so afraid, can't go through with it, feels shame and guilt, refuses to do it. In the middle of the night, wakes the dentist up and says, I'm in so much mouth pain, you've got to pull a tooth. Dentist can't find anything wrong. Lemon will not let it go until finally the dentist pulls a tooth, and he struts around the next day with this pulled, perfectly healthy tooth, but the war wound to validate him, to alleviate the guilt, to make him one and the same with all the other men, to realign with obedience. Remember how to tell a true war story. Sometimes a true war story never happened, but it's truer than the truth. A true war story is never moral. A true war story can barely believe. A true war story you feel in your gut. A true war story should make you uncomfortable. Is this a true war story? This is Kurt Lemon, Ted Lavender, and Dave Jensen and Lee Strunk, and Jimmy Cross. So let's look at the end here. Page 83, down near the bottom. It says, as we sat waiting, Kurt Lemon began to tense up. He kept fidgeting, playing with his dog tags. Finally, somebody asked what the problem was, and Lemon looked down at his hands and said that back in high school, he'd had a couple of bad experiences with dentists. Real sadism, he said. Torture chamber stuff. He didn't mind blood or pain. He actually enjoyed combat, but there was something about a dentist that just gave him the creeps. And he glanced over at the field tent and said, no way, count me out. Nobody messes with these teeth. But a few minutes later, when the dentist called his name, Lemon stood up and walked into the tent. It was over fast. He fainted even before the man touched him. 4 of us had to hoist him up and lay him on the cot. When he came to, there was a funny new look on his face, almost sheepish, as if he'd been caught committing some terrible crime. He wouldn't talk to anyone. For the rest of the day, he stayed off by himself, sitting alone under a tree, just staring down at the field tent. He seemed a little dazed. Now and then we could hear him cussing, bawling himself out. Anyone else would have laughed it off, but for Kurt Lemon it was too much. The embarrassment must have turned a screw in his head. Late that night he crept down to the dental tent, and he switched on a flashlight, and he woke up the young captain and told him he had a monster toothache, a killer, he said, like a nail in his jaw. The dentist couldn't find any problem, but Lemon kept insisting, so the man finally shrugged and shot in the Novocaine and yanked out a perfectly good tooth. There was some pain, no doubt, but in the morning, Kurt Lemon was all smiles. So there's some Ted Lavender in there. There's Ted Lavender comes out, he's blown up into a tree, or is Kurt Lemon blown up into a tree? One of them is blown up. They're both blown up, but one is blown up into a tree. I think it's Kurt Lemon. In this, he's sitting under that tree. And there's this intense amount of guilt that he hasn't suffered the same way, or that he's been too weak. There's this tremendous amount of embarrassment that he hasn't been a soldier. And I believe that you can make a throughway between Jimmy Cross's guilt over Ted Lavender's death and Kurt Lemon's guilt over needing to escape. to escape this situation. Over fainting. Boom, down. He falls, just like Ted Lavender falls. It says he's a little dazed, just like Ted Lavender was dazed when he was shot. These are all the same story. A true war story doesn't have to be about war. It doesn't have to be about war. Sweetheart of the Song Tra Bong. This is a pretty wild story. It actually starts with this little preamble. It says, Vietnam was full of strange stories. Some improbable, some well beyond that, but the stories that will last forever are those that swirl back and forth across the border between trivia and bedlam, the mad and the mundane. This one keeps returning to me. I heard it from Rat Kiley. And then it goes on to explain that Rat Kiley is not, Then it goes on to explain that Rat Kiley is not the most reliable of storytellers, and that what motivates him in the telling of a story is not factual accuracy, but getting the listener or the reader to feel what you felt, which often is bigger than the actual experience itself, and therefore often the story is full of elaboration. And so when you listen to Rat Kiley tell a story, you have to tone it down some. So taking that into account, as you read the story of the sweetheart of the Song Tra Bong, you are faced with some choices. What is real and what is not? So the basic premise of the sweetheart of the Song Tra Bong is that Rat Kiley knew these two people. One was a guy named Mark Fossey, who was a soldier, and the other was a girl named Mary Ann Bell, who Mark Fossey brought over to Vietnam, his girlfriend. He brought her over. And this is the description of her upon arrival. So it says, Rat never backed down from this story. He claimed to have witnessed the incident with his own eyes, and I remember how upset he became one morning when Mitchell Sanders challenged him on its basic premise. It can't happen, Sanders said. Nobody ships his honey over to Nam. Rat shook his head. I saw it, man. I was right there. This guy did it. His girlfriend? Straight on. It's a fact. Rat's voice squeaked a little. He paused and looked at his hands. Listen, the guy sends her the money, flies her over. This cute blonde, just a kid, just barely out of high school. She shows up with a suitcase and one of those plastic cosmetic bags, comes right out to the boonies. I swear to God, man, she's got on culottes, white culottes, and this pink sweater. There she is. There it is, man. There she is. So she arrives, and Mary Ann and Mark set up house. It says on the first night they set up house in one of the bunkers along the perimeter near the Special Forces hooch. And over the next 2 weeks, they stuck together like a pair of high school steadies. It says she's good for morale. The guys like to see her. She's a little piece of home. She's there to bring civilization to the wild. Eventually, though, she says, page 91, I'm here. I might as well learn something. And so they take her out. They take her out to see the villages, the people, the death and the danger. They don't take her to war, but they take her, I mean, she's in war. They don't take her to active combat, but they take her out, right? She convinces them. She says, listen, it can't be that bad. They're human beings, aren't they? Like everybody else. Like everybody else. That's on page 92. On page 93, it says, you don't know human nature. You don't know Nam. And then on page 107, when Rat Kiley says he doesn't know the end of the story, Sanders rebels against that, saying that not telling them the end of the story is against human nature. It's against human nature. It's a kind of torture. So she convinces them, I'm going to go out. I'm going to see it. You know, they're just like, they're people like anybody else. While out and about, it says that she seems comfortable and entirely at home. The hostile atmosphere does not seem to register. On their way back to the compound, she stops for a swim in the river. The Song Tra Bong is a river. She stops for a swim in the river. We've been following rivers. I've asked you to follow rivers. remember that when a character goes in literature in general in the West, when a character goes into something, into a body of water, into a shower, into a swimming pool, gets a bucket of water dumped on their head, when they go into something, they come out different. It's a baptism. It doesn't have to be a religious baptism. It's just a change. You go in as one thing and you come out another. So she's going in for a swim in the Song Tra Bong. Fosse's trying to explain to her about ambushes and snipers and the power of an AK-47, and she's just swimming. Eddie Diamond says she'll learn. That's the scary part. I promise you, this girl will most definitely learn. She gets really comfortable. In fact, she's there to bring civilization, but in reality, the war is going to change her. Vietnam is going to change her. The more time that passes, the more time she spends out in Vietnam, in the villages, in the jungle, and the more she changes. It actually says on 94 and 95, her body seemed foreign somehow, too stiff in places, too firm where the softness used to be. The bubbliness was gone, the nervous giggle too. When she laughed now, which was rare, it was only when something struck her as truly funny. And then she disappears. She disappears, and turns out that she has been on ambush with 6 Green Berets. And the Green Berets, they're kind of nuts. Kind of nuts. So she's been out lying on the ground, waiting for someone to pass so that she can kill them with these 6 Green Berets. She was brought, what did I write? I wrote, looking at my notes, I wrote, war brought her to ambush, but civilization is what she was meant to bring. She is now being asked to not let it affect her. So after they find out that she's on ambush and she's regularly doing ambush with these 6 Green Berets, Mark and his friends try to get her back into civilization. They wash her and put on her culottes. And it says, Marianne's hair was freshly shampooed. She wore a white blouse, a navy blue skirt, a pair of plain black flats. Over dinner, she kept her eyes down, poking at her food, subdued to the point of silence. She'd bow her head, mumble out a vague word or two. There were no real answers. She's gone. She's gone. She's not the same. In fact, on page 100, the next morning, she was gone, and the 6 greenies, the Green Berets, were gone too. She would come back, but never fully. She would never fully be there. And it says, in a sense, she never returned, not entirely her. And here's where it gets weird. I mean, it's weird, but here's where it gets weird. Because do you remember in How to Tell a True War Story, there was that part where, I've already talked about it when I was talking about the dentist, but I'm going to talk about it again. There's that part where all the guys are listening and they hear all the noises, the music, all of that. The fog is there and they blow it all up, right? So here we go. On page, let's go back there. Let's go back there for a minute. Page 68 and 69. It says, God's truth, Mitchell Sanders said, a 6-man patrol goes up into the mountains on a basic listening post operation. So it's Mitchell Sanders who challenges Rat Kiley in Song Tra Bong, and Sweetheart of the Song Tra Bong, saying this story could not have happened. So now it's Mitchell Sanders in How to Tell a True War Story who's telling us this story, okay? A 6-man patrol goes up into the mountains on a basic listening post operation. The idea is to spend a week up there, just lie low and listen for enemy movement. They've got a radio along, so if they hear anything suspicious, anything, they're supposed to call in artillery or gunships, whatever it takes. 6-man patrol. How many Green Berets are there? 6. With her, there would be 7. She's not there in the previous story. She's not there when Mitchell Sanders tells it, but she's there in the preceding story when Rat Kiley tells it, because on page 101 it says, the 7 silhouettes seemed to float across the surface of the earth like spirits, vaporous and unreal. As he watched, Rat said it made him think of some freaky opium dream. The silhouettes moved without moving. Silently, one by one, they came up the hill, passed through the wire, and drifted in a loose file across the compound. It was then that Rat said that he picked out Marianne's face. But Jenna, you say, this is not the same story. Turn the page. Page 103. It was after midnight when Rat and Eddie Diamond went out to check. The night had gone cold and steamy, a low fog sliding down from the mountains, and out in the dark, there was music playing. Not loud, but not soft either. It had a chaotic, almost unmusical sound without rhythm or form or progression like the noise of nature, a synthesizer it seemed, or maybe an electric organ. In the background, just audible, a woman's voice was half singing, half chanting, but the lyrics seemed to be in a foreign tongue. Go to page 69. After a couple of days, the guys start hearing this real soft kind of whacked out music, weird echoes and stuff like a radio or something, but it's not a radio. It's this strange music that comes right out of the rocks, far away sort of, but right up close. They try to ignore it, but it's a listening post, right? So they listen. And every night they keep hearing this crazy concert, all kinds of chimes and xylophones. I mean, this is the wilderness. No way, it can't be real, but there it is, like the mountains are tuned into Radio Hanoi. Naturally, they get nervous. One guy sticks juicy fruit in his ears. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Hear that? He whispers. Fosse whispers. It's Marianne. Eddie Diamond took his arm. Let's get you inside. It's somebody's radio. That's all it is. Move it now. Marianne, just listen. Sure, but listen. Fosse suddenly pulls away, twists sideways, and fell back against the gate. He lay there with his eyes closed. The music, the noise, whatever it was, came from beyond the fence. The place was dark except for a small glowing window, which stood partly open, the panes dancing. That voice, he said, Mary Ann. So they do approach her. They approach where she is staying. And inside they find bones, stacks of bones, all kind. She's wearing her pink sweater and her white blouse and a simple cotton skirt. And at her throat is a necklace of human tongues. A necklace of human tongues. Go back to How to Tell a True War Story. Page 69. Well, let's go to page 68. You've heard this, but let's hear it in light of a necklace of human tongues. God's Truth, Mitchell Sanders says, a 6-man patrol goes up into the mountains on a basic listening post operation. The idea is to spend a week up there, just lie low and listen for enemy movement. They've got a radio along, so if they hear anything suspicious, anything, they're supposed to call in artillery or gunships, whatever it takes. Otherwise, they keep strict field discipline. Absolute silence. They just listen. We're talking regulation by the book, LP. These 6 guys, they don't say boo for a solid week. They don't got tongues. All ears. They don't got tongues. Marianne is Vietnam. Marianne is the war. When they find them, Marianne says, when Marianne realizes that they're there, that Fosse and his friend are there, she says, you're in a place where you don't belong. She says, you don't know. You hide in this little fortress behind wire and sandbags, and you don't know. Sometimes I want to eat this place, the whole country, the dirt, the death. I just want to swallow it and have it there inside me. That's how I feel. It's like this appetite. I get scared sometimes, lots of times, but it's not bad. Let's go back to page 11. This is how Jimmy Cross feels about Martha. Martha, not Marianne, Martha. This is how Jimmy Cross feels about Martha. Dense. Lola's barking at a person leaving a package. Dense, crushing love. Oh, Lola. It's enough. That's enough. Dense, crushing love. Kneeling, watching the hole, he tried to concentrate on Lee Strunk and the war, all the dangers, but his love was too much for him. He felt paralyzed. He wanted to sleep inside her lungs and breathe her blood and be smothered. Go back to page 106. Sometimes I want to eat this place. I want to swallow it and have it there inside me. That's how I feel. The dirt, the death. He wanted to sleep inside her lungs and breathe her blood and be smothered. I want to eat this place, the dirt, the death, swallow it and have it there inside me. She says, I know I'm glowing in the dark. I'm on fire almost. I'm burning away into nothing, but it doesn't matter because I know exactly who I am. On page 108, Rat admits that he loved her, that they all loved her. Says a lot. We all did, I guess. The way she looked, Marianne made you think about girls back home, how pure and innocent they all are, how they'll never understand any of this, not in a billion years. Try to tell them about it. They'll just stare at you with those big round candy eyes. They won't understand zip. It's like trying to tell somebody what chocolate tastes like. There it is. You got to taste it. And that's the thing with Marianne. She was there. She was up to her eyeballs in it. After the war, man, I promise you, you won't find nobody like her. On page 81, it says, she wasn't listening. It wasn't a war story. It was a love story. But you can't say that. All you can do is tell it one more time, patiently adding and subtracting, making up a few things to get to the real truth. No Mitchell Sanders, you tell her. No lemon, no Rat Kylie, no Trail Junction, no Baby Buffalo, no vine or moss or white blossoms. Beginning to end, you tell her it's all made up, every detail. The mountains and the river, and especially that poor dumb baby buffalo. None of it happened, none of it. And even if it did happen, it didn't happen in the mountains. It happened in this little village on the Batanong Peninsula, and it was raining like crazy. And one night, a guy named Stink Harris woke up screaming with a leech on his tongue. You can tell a true war story if you just keep on telling it. And in the end, of course, a true war story is never about war. It's about sunlight. It's about the special way that dawn spreads out on a river when you know you must cross the river and march into the mountains and do things you are afraid to do. It's about love and memory. It's about sorrow. It's about sisters who never write back and people who never listen. We all loved her. Page 109. What happened to her, Rat said, was what happened to all of them. You come over clean and you get dirty, and then afterward, it's never the same. You go in as one thing, you come out as another. Baptism. Page 110. One morning, all alone, Marianne walked off into the mountains and did not come back. It was a war, and war went on, but the story did not end there. If you believe the greenies, Rat said, Marianne was still somewhere out there in the dark. She was wearing her culottes, her pink sweater, and a necklace of human tongues. She was dangerous. She was ready for the kill. She becomes Vietnam. She is unafraid. Her lack of fear, her facing her demons, the demons, is very different from Kurt Lemon in The Dentist. Very different from Jimmy in The Things They Carried. Very different from Jensen and Strunk. Very much like, very much like the fictional Tim O'Brien in that boat. Both of them on a river, both of them through the river, choose something very different than they thought they would, become something very different than they thought they were. Is it a true war story? It's the story. It's the story that keeps being told over and over and over again. It's the story. Marianne is Vietnam. They all love her. We'll stop there for now. Next time we talk, near the end of this month, we will be talking about the 4 stories: Stockings, Church, The Man I Killed, and Ambush. Those 4 stories. And it's going to be a good time. So, until then, in the meantime, let's go read.